And with that, I will yield to the ranking member of this committee, Ms. Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I will point out that being a bad driver doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether or not you can speak English. I also will point out that I've had the privilege, or maybe not so much the privilege, of driving in multiple countries, and I was not required to get another license. I was able to rent cars in other countries and drive because some things are kind of universal. And frankly, if somebody passes the test as it's laid out, then I think that that's kind of what it is. If we need to change the test, then we need to change the test. But nevertheless, one of the things that has become clear over the past year is that this president can be bought. If you have enough money, you can get favorable regulations from this White House. You can get pardons, you can get contracts, and you can get influence with this president, even if you have ties to a foreign government, which the Justice Department has described as, and I quote, a significant risk to U.S. national security. So we've already established that the Trump administration has shown a blatant disregard for our cybersecurity. In his first month in office, the president dismantled nearly all of DHS's advisory committees that study major cyber attacks and provide actionable recommendations to defend against those attacks. So, Mr. Kanaki, what role did these advisory committees play in protecting our critical infrastructure? How does their dissolution make us less safe?
Thank you, Ranking Member Crockett. Absolutely, these committees were essential to establishing the mechanisms for coordinating and collaborating on cybersecurity with our industry partners. They were necessary but not sufficient. They laid the groundwork for the kind of real-time collaborative engagement that has been emerging over the last 5 years. We've gone from having just these discussions on policy and risk and threat to actually working with government agencies, with CISA, with NSA, with Cyber Command, and the FBI.
So if I'm to understand you correctly, you believe that they were necessary, but you believe that they weren't even sufficient in their current form. So if anything, you believe that they should have been beefed up, not deleted, correct?
There's absolutely a need to expand these collaborative mechanisms with industry and to make them real-time and substantial, yes.
Now, I represent the state of Texas, which is the largest exporting state in the country. Texas has 32 official ports of entry that serve as critical gateways to global trade. Mr. Kanaki, as you probably know, 80% of cranes at U.S. ports are manufactured by a Chinese state-owned entity, and the government has found communication devices embedded on these cranes that could be used to track port activity and enable cyber espionage. What concerns are raised when the technology used inside a critical infrastructure system is manufactured by a foreign adversary?
In the case of these devices, what we're talking about is an ability to both monitor and control and disrupt the infrastructure should it be in China's interest to do so. So it's an absolutely critical risk that we be able to maintain our trade in the event that they feel they are compelled to use that capability. The focus here, in my view, needs to be retrofitting at this point. We don't need to replace the steel that holds up the cranes. I think we're certain that's pretty strong. What we need to do is replace the electronics, rip and replace the electronics, and operate them with trusted hardware and trusted software that we know is not communicating back to China.
The costs associated with operating technology needed for critical infrastructure are increasing. It doesn't help that the Trump administration's policies are partly responsible for the cost increase. However, states are weighing the cost and availability of the technology they need to operate and maintain their critical infrastructure. There aren't domestic manufacturers for many of these necessary machines, such as cargo ships or port cranes. Let me add to this. We did have the Chips and Science Act, and my predecessor in Congress was actually the one that ushered that through. That was to make sure that we could manufacture more chips right here domestically. And it is so unfortunate because there were so many plans and there were so many that were saying we are going to take advantage of this bill and pull down on these dollars. And now those plans have fallen by the wayside because of some of the terrible tariff policies that currently are taking place. It is harming us not only economically, but it is harming us from a security standpoint. This was not fiscal responsible policy that this administration has engaged in, but it's also been very harmful to us domestically. So the last question is, so what solutions are there to mitigate the risk posed by foreign technology and infrastructure supply chains?
I think we badly need to make a government investment in the retrofitting of these technologies. The markets simply are not going to support this investment on their own, given that these are national security risks and not risks that are necessarily going to be borne by shareholders of companies.
Thank you so much for your time. I'll yield back.
Thank the ranking member. I would just make one minor point that probably when she was driving in those foreign countries, she wasn't driving an 18-wheeler. I could probably guarantee that. Well, I'm hoping not. I know I couldn't even drive one, but the CDL requirements are much more specific and much harder. Do you have a CDL? I don't have a CDL.
I may have.
You could.
I got a license to carry. I'm sure.
Jazz, so do I. So do I. So you never know. But